Welcome to this episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess. I'm Aric.
And I'm Angie.
We are married with a ton of kids.
We have 6 kids total. He has 3 and I have 3.
My name's Hallie and I love riding horses.
I'm Lexi and I love agriculture.
My name's Carter and I love eating.
My name's Chase and I love lifting weights.
My name's Summer and I love spending my parents' money.
I'm Dane and I love baseball.
Our show is about our blended, blessed, and always a mess life. And our hope is if you find yourself in the same situation we are in, that by sharing our story, all the fun and all the mess, the challenges we are experiencing, it will give you some inspirations, laughs, and community, knowing you are not alone in this mess.
We appreciate you spending time with us. Let's dive in.
Welcome to this week's episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess, where I have chosen, if you're watching on YouTube, to sit today in a spot in our master bedroom at Hallie's house in Florida, where we have a portrait, a painting of Hallie walking the beach. It's from our final family vacation, and we were able to somehow get this great photo of Hallie, and then we turned it into a painting. And since today's episode, we will discuss the sentencing that happened recently in her court case. I felt like this was an appropriate place to sit in case you happen to be watching the podcast. Now, if you're listening, we're glad to have you. And this is just kind of a recap of what we've been going through for almost 2 years, but it's come to culmination over the last week or so.
How to say the process of the state of Missouri charging the person that killed Hallie has been a journey of emotions, of lots of learnings, of things that we never wanted to know, of highs and lows. It's hard to even describe. But
yeah, an understatement is not big enough.
Right. This chapter and this part of Hallie's story has come to an end. And so we don't hopefully have to spend any more time and energy thinking about the process, wondering what will happen, trying to understand the process. It's just been super heavy. So we're done with that. Something that we never asked for, didn't choose this. None of this was in our control. But as we learned early on that the one thing that we can participate in this whole criminal process is the victim's impact statements. So that was one thing that we could have a say in. We can control how we respond. We can control how we honor Hallie and how we live our lives. So we thought for this particular episode, we would share the one thing that we were in control of this entire process, and that was the victim's impact statements. What they recommend is that 3 or 4 people take the stand and share their particular victim impact. And so for me, I thought through, like everybody that would want to say something, and we narrowed it to my dad because he had such a special relationship with Hallie. Hallie absolutely adored my mom and dad, her grandparents. And like it's been very hard for my parents to see me go through this complete heartbreak, I would say the reverse is equally true. It has been so hard for me to see my parents struggle and be super broken throughout this. So they too have never been through so much grief and heartache in their 77 years. So I'll dive into my dad's first. My dad also has never really spoke in front of people. So for him to take this on was a moment that I was super proud of him. But like also I will say I worried a little bit about it of like, did I ask him to do too much because he has such a big heart and this has been so hard on him that, you know, he would wake up at like 3:00 in the morning and not be able to go back to sleep because he was thinking about losing Hallie and what he would want to say. And, you know, he was worried he wouldn't be able to even get through it. Just even thinking about starting to write, he was super emotional, but this is what he ended up with. Your Honor, my name is Kenny Oligschlager. I am Angie's father and Hallie's grandpa. 22 months ago, it was our family's get together for Thanksgiving on that Saturday. Sunday came and the devastating news that Hallie had been shot. From Sunday afternoon till Tuesday afternoon, the world stood still for my family as sorrow and grief overtook us all. In my mind, I can't comprehend how this happened. You never point a weapon at somebody and pull the trigger. You don't have to have gun safety to know this. In my military training at the firing range, weapon safety was number one. The weapon is always pointed downrange. The only time you point it at somebody was to take out a potential enemy. The pain of this avoidable tragedy is no less today. Hallie is gone and will never be back. All we have left is the good memories of Hallie. We also have the awful memories of what my family is going through losing Hallie. I watch the terrible pain and sorrow that I see in my daughter's face. That breaks my heart. Hallie is so missed. As for me, I miss her greatly. I miss Hallie saying, "Grandpa," after her little tricks she would pull. Hallie and I did a little poem writing together, and now my poem writing partner is gone. Hallie can never be replaced. I miss her, and I love her so much. Grandpa. He did so
Your dad did
good.
a really good job. I thought for somebody that doesn't speak in front of other people in such a powerful environment with families from each side staring at him and having a TV cameras on him, because obviously the local media was all over this case. He did a great job. Like, he stood up there, he got his point across. There were tears, broke down, and he was your dad. He was Hallie's grandpa, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, we should probably talk a little bit about that, even just like getting ready for the actual start of the sentencing hearing. They had moved us to a different courtroom that was much smaller than the one that we're used to. And so each family, each side, had 2 rows of benches. And so you had to limit who could be in there. So you come into this big open hallway full of people. You're all mixed up almost between the 2 different families. And you had to like select who could go in the room and fit in the bench. And so our family had the back 2 rows, and the other family, the other side, had the first 2 rows. So when you took the stand, you weren't looking at your family. You were looking at the opposing side as they all sat there and stared at you. I mean, it makes my heart race right now, just like thinking about it and about the things that we've had to experience that most people will never have to experience. So next was Chase. I offered it to the twins to take the stand, told them they absolutely did not have to. But regardless, I wanted them to write their victim's impact statement out, whether they were going to read it or someone else was going to read it, or it was completely private to them, because it's so therapeutic to write out your thoughts in such a heavy, heavy, deep pain type of situation that most kids their age will never experience. No one else can relate to what this feels like. So Chase is naturally the protector. And when we lost Hallie, that boy went right into protective mode and tried to be such a young man for everybody. And so when it came time to have the opportunity to take the stand, I knew Chase would. I had no doubt in my mind that he would get up there and be fierce, because he has such a big heart. And him and Hallie actually have similar personalities with their emotions and how they tackle life. And Hallie was complete beast mode in a lot of situations, and I see some of that in Chase too. I mean, him and Hallie hunted for the first time together the weekend before, and they had gotten into it that weekend, like over normal sibling things, like normal kids do. Thank God they worked it out. And the last night that they hunted, they recorded like a 10-minute video of them in the stand talking and laughing with each other while they kind of whispered and tried to be quiet. For me as a mom, one of the most heartbreaking things, I think, in this whole situation is just what the twins have lost. And their ventures together were just getting started. Like, that was the first year that those two hunted together, and that was their thing. And they will never be able to do it again, ever. And I think it was equally painful for the twins to have to sit through the defendant's victim impact statements, because it will never be comparable to what they have gone through.
Yeah, 100%.
And I'll get into that a little bit later, but just keep that in mind. Chase got to hunt with his sister one time, and it will never, ever happen again. Ever. Anyway, his strength during this entire process, like I said, something no 13-year-old and now 15-year-old should ever have to deal with. And he wrote his own statement, and I told our victim's advocate that I will not censor what he wrote, that this is their time to share what they lost and how it impacted him.
And I guess we should say to people that some of these things did have to be censored. There were rules that went along with it. So when Angie says that she wasn't going to censor what the twins had to say, that's why she's saying it that way.
Well, in reality, you can say whatever you want. It's your right to say whatever you want. On the flip side, the guidance that we receive is that he was found guilty. So it needs to be more about the impact it's had on your life, not having a statement directed towards the defendant. So this is Chase's. Your Honor, I'm Chase Phillips, Hallie Phillips' brother, and I'm 15 years old. His neglect towards my sister was no secret. As a boyfriend, a fiance, or even a husband, you're supposed to support your significant other and be there for them. You're supposed to be happy for them when they achieve goals and respect their family's wishes if they don't want you to marry their daughter. Didn't only not do one of these, he didn't do any of them. Hallie couldn't post pictures of her on vacation if it wasn't there. Hallie couldn't dress up or put makeup on if she went to dinner with her friends because he would be upset. When he shot and killed Hallie, he didn't just take my sister. He took my mom's daughter and my dad's daughter and my grandparents' grandchild. He took a best friend. He took a coworker. He took a cousin. He took a godmother. He took a leader, and he took a hell of a barrel racer. Now me and my siblings don't have that person we could just talk to, all because he couldn't follow one single gun safety rule. Since Hallie died, I have to spend every day since trying to make my parents smile because it took away their happiness. I have to look at my sister through a picture frame or a screen because you couldn't follow one single rule. Now that he killed my sister, to stand up here face to face with that person and read this note, which should I remind you that no 15-year-old should ever have to do, let alone anyone. Now me and my family have to live the rest of our lives with this burden and weight on our shoulders. Thanks for listening. He cried at the end, but he kept going. And I think that's like our whole family's mantra, right? You cry and then you keep going.
You fight forward. You just keep fighting because that is the option. What are you going to do? You lay in bed all day, but we keep fighting forward. So he did a great job too. Knew he would stand up, fight for Hallie. Him and I talked about it in the car several times beforehand. I know he talked to you about it. And he did a good job. And Summer and I had also talked. She was worried about it. But at the end of the day, I'm glad that she found the strength to get on the stand and read hers. She was very impressive, very impressive. And I think she's probably glad that she found that courage as well.
Yeah, Summer definitely was not sure she wanted to take this stand, and I didn't want to push her. I did have her write out a statement again, so therapeutic. But I know that's definitely not her thing. And I mean, I think sometimes she doesn't even want to talk to adults sometimes, much less take the stand. But I did share with them, like, this is your one chance. And I know it sucks that you're 15, but I want you to really think through this because I don't want you to get 10 years down the road and be like, oh, I wish I would have said something. So that morning of the sentencing hearing, I said, well, have you decided what you're going to do? And she's like, I don't want to think about it today. Because keep in mind, my kids went to school. So he went to school that day. I picked him up a little bit early because it was at 3:00, but they persevered. And she said, I don't want to decide right now because I don't want to sit through school and like worry about it. I don't want to think about it. She wrote her statement the day before, and it was so profound. As we went into the courtroom, obviously the nerves were super high for everyone. Summer was sitting next to me and her legs were just bouncing up and down. And she leaned over to me and she's like, Mom, I don't think I can do it. And I'm like, that is totally okay, Summer. I just want you to know, like, you've already had your worst day. You've already had it. So she saw her grandpa go, then she saw Chase go. And when her name was called, she got up and she took that stand and she looked fear and pain right in the damn face. And as painful and awkward and stressful that was sitting in that courtroom, when Summer was on the stand, it made me smile because as she started to read, she got super upset and then she like collected herself. And when she finished, she looked over at the defendant like directly in the eye 3 different times and he just looked down. And I'm like, oh my God, that level of strength and grit and bravery that my kids have shown. I've seen it in the last 21 months, but when you're sitting in a courtroom and you take the stand and read a statement, that is a whole other level of badassness. Again, she cried and she kept going. My dad said, when I talked to him afterwards, he's like, I thought you were going to come save me whenever I started crying. Like, I forgot to tell him that we had learned that was my assumption, honestly. It was like, hey, if you get upset, I'll just come up there and finish reading it for you. And before we went in, I'd asked the victim's advocate, I'm like, so can I just go up there if they get upset? And they're like, oh no, the judge doesn't allow that. I'm like, oh shit, okay. My dad, I guess, thought I was going to come up there and save him. Like, nope, that wasn't an option. I just forgot to tell you that.
Worked out for the best that way.
Yeah.
Her statement was great, though. I mean, it was similar to Chase's in that they have to both try to make their parents happy and all they've lost. But she did talk about losing the person that she felt knew her most in the world. That's tough to hear from a 15-year-old girl, right? Who's missing a sister. So yeah, I just thought she did a great job I noticed it right away as well, that she stared at the guilty party when she gained her confidence, and just proud of her resilience, and everything just worked out the way it was supposed to, as far as her finding the nerve to get up there and the fact that you could not rescue your dad. And so it was, and it just is what it is. But you have Summers, and I'll let you read that one.
My name is Summer Phillips, and I'm Hallie's little sister. Some people may say that the death of my sister has caused me to lose the most out of everybody.
I'm going to have to save you on this one.
So here's how my life has been affected by the loss of my one and only older sister. My sister wasn't here to watch me turn 15 and start to drive. She wasn't here for my very first homecoming. She wasn't here to watch me experience high school in my freshman year. She wasn't here to talk me through dealing with fake friends. She won't be here to be my bridesmaid or maid of honor like we've always talked about. She won't even be at my wedding, which is supposed to be the best day of my life. She won't get to watch her little sister grow up. She won't get to watch Summer B graduate from high school or college. So do you know how hard it is to lose the only person in the world who you felt like truly understood you? Or how it feels to constantly feel like you need to make your parents smile because they are suffering every day from the tragic loss of their first child? How watching your whole family change, knowing nothing will ever be the same again? Do you know how many times I wanted, actually needed, to call my big sister for advice or just needing someone to talk to? My mom is the only person I can go for advice, and a lot of times I just hope she can put herself in my shoes and understand what it's like to be a 15-year-old. So today, Judge, I pray you can put yourself in my shoes and make the best decision.
It was emotional.
Yeah. And
I think she cried less than you did, though, if I'm being honest.
When she read it,
when she read it in court, she cried, yes, but I think you cried more than she did.
Reading hers just now, you mean?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I didn't cry when
There's
I
nothing
read mine.
wrong with that. No, you did not. You were a badass boss bitch. You were a mama bear, not a mama bird.
No. So then it's my turn. I actually had my victim's impact statement written probably 20 months ago, the minute I knew that at some point in this long journey that we would have an opportunity to speak. But as it got closer to the actual sentencing, I learned, again, like I alluded to earlier, that since he was found guilty, it's really about the impact that this has had on us, not necessarily all the things that I would want to say to him. So since I didn't get that opportunity to share my original, I thought I would share my original victim's impact statement on here. And so I would just say, if you are maybe partial to the other side, you might want to just pause it here and not listen to
that's a surefire guaranteed way that everyone's going to listen. Okay. Just so you know.
All right.
I don't blame you. I felt, if I'm being honest with you, I felt like having to change up the victim's advocate statements to where it was about what we were feeling rather than about what we really wanted to say. That just seems incredibly unfair based on everything that we've had to go through as a family. But it was the rules, so we followed them. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't write what you're about to read. I had one that I wrote that just went to the judge. My original one was much more like what you're about to read. And so I totally get where you're coming from. And if anybody listening has lost a child, they're going to get where you're coming from.
Oh, they'll totally understand.
Yeah, 100%. If you haven't lost a child and you have a problem with it, you don't want to trade places with us. That's all I would say. Anytime somebody asks, it's like, would you like to trade places? The quick answer is no. So go ahead, because I've heard this a couple of times and I absolutely love it.
All right, here we go.
Actually, let me say this, because this is what everyone listening, well, no matter what side you're on, needs to hear. What Angie's about to read to you is the true side, the true relationship of Hallie and Josh. So that's always a question, right? One side sees this loving relationship. The other side, us, we have Hallie's phone, we have her computer, all the things that we ever worried about, were confirmed once we got those. And now Angie can tell you more about that.
If there's anything I want you to remember from what I have to say today, is that you took Hallie's life before you physically took her life. Here's the thing, defendant. I actually don't wish you ill will. I haven't even really been that angry at you, because the fact is that my feelings towards you haven't changed at all. You merely validated what I knew all along. I pray that you and your family get the support and therapy that you all need, because clearly there's a lot that your family needs to work through after I have seen how your family has treated us and looked at us in the courtroom. I had one wish for Hallie when she started dating, that she, 1, will know her worth, 2, find someone that would take care of her and grow with her, and 3, help her make her dreams come true. That's all parents want, and you failed all 3. You took advantage of Hallie's big heart and twisted it around into meeting her own needs rather than supporting you. And that is a narcissist. Here are a few examples. Every family trip we went on, everyone, while they were dating, Hallie would be upset because you were unhappy with her. Examples of, why did your mom post a picture of you in a swimsuit? Will you stop posting so much because you're having fun? I'm not inviting you on our camping trip because you don't bring me on your family vacations. Which, by the way, a camping trip is probably a little bit easier to bring someone along than traveling to Florida with a family of 8. The Fox Theater that I brought the girls to watch The Lion King. So here's a quick story. I took Hallie to The Lion King when she was little, like 5 or 6 years old, and she absolutely loved it. She loved plays. So when it was at the Fox, I decided I was going to have a girls' night with my 3 daughters, and we would go to The Lion King. And it was a freaking blast. We had so much fun. There were tears, there was laughter, it was all the emotions watching The Lion King. But after it was over, I could tell Hallie was off and not in a good mood. And I asked her what was wrong, and she's like, nothing. And then it was a quiet ride home. After we lost Hallie, it like hit me one day. I wonder what happened that night, because she was on her phone. And so I scroll back to April of 2022 when we went to The Lion King, and I found the text of, looks like you're having fun, but my mom and I need to talk to you about your mom. Well, of course, Hallie couldn't share any of this with us because she knew how her family and her friends felt about him. Every level of joy or happiness when she was with her family was overpowered by him not wanting her to have fun. So Hallie, in turn, had to play down her enjoyment of life for you. Her 20th birthday, he didn't show up for dinner. That was her last birthday. Most of our family gatherings, you either didn't show up, or she had some excuse for you, or you left early, like the Thanksgiving right before she died. She covered everything for you. You corrected her on things that she would say. You took credit for her achievements, saying like, well, I told her to do that. Another example of taking joy from her is Aric got backstage passes to Cody Johnson, and she loved Cody Johnson. And instead of having fun and enjoying that moment with her, you pouted in your seat and didn't even go backstage to take pictures with her and Cody Johnson. Here's an idea. It is not about you when you are in a relationship. You pouted during our wedding because you didn't think anybody should be happy for us. Meanwhile, Hallie was ecstatic. And that started the relationships with her roommate because she couldn't take it anymore and put you in your place that morning of the wedding, telling you if Hallie is happy, then you should be happy. It is not about you. Wanting her to move 45 minutes away when she was in college because you didn't want to drive back and forth. Wanting to get married before she graduated college so her diploma would have your last name on it. That was alarming when I found that text. Having her in the car when you tell me you were going to ask her to marry you. And then also having her in the car when you ask her dad. What is special about any of that? You are devaluing her worth. And then she had to cover up your embarrassing proposal because saying she found their ring. Also saw those texts. Buying a gun safe. How ironic. Rather than putting $200 in on a full. Not taking off for her upcoming shoulder surgery when she asked you multiple times if you had taken off, and you either ignored or deflected what she was asking you, saying, well, I hadn't seen my boss at work, when your boss is your freaking uncle, for God's sakes. She wanted to know that you would take care of her, and deep down, she knew you wouldn't. You projected your shame from your life and sucked her into your world of moods and general lack of growth. The truth is that you wanted to pull her away from me as much as possible, because if she was strong and independent like her mom, she wouldn't need you. You pulled her away from her friends and family, so she only had you, then she couldn't leave. But one of my most heartbreaking issues I have with you is the lack of support for her love of horses. You fed her BS so she would move into the trailer with you, promising that she could have horses there. When Hallie talked to me about wanting to move in with you, I told her I disagreed, that she's making it way too hard on herself while still in college. Why wouldn't you move to Columbia until she was out of school, since she was full-time in college and working? But oh no, you put this dream in her head of having horses on your grandpa's land. Sidebar, at the sentencing hearing, his mom spoke, and she said that they had a goal together of having an equine farm. Not one of Hallie's friends or her family ever thought that would happen. He couldn't even get underpinning put around the trailer when she died in November, and clearly winter was coming. So I'm pretty sure you can't create an equine farm. So I told Hallie, listen, you're 20 years old. I'm not going to tell you what you can and cannot do, but I disagree with you moving in. I told Hallie that I would not pay for boarding of her horse, that was now going to be on you and her financially. So what happened? She had to sell her horse. And in a text on that day, she called me super upset, crying, saying, Mom, this is too much. I'm driving too far for the horse. I don't have money. I don't have time. You text her and said, call your mom's bluff. And here's the reality of it. I was calling your bluff because I knew you had zero intention of supporting her. And I knew one day it would all become very apparent to her, that she would see what I saw. I just didn't know it would involve taking her life for her to see it, and the whole world to see that you were never capable of taking care of her. I discovered this note she had written in her phone in February of 2022. You resent that part of me. I'm going to ride and compete as long as I can, and it's a chore for you to listen to me talk about something I'm passionate about. I feel you could care less about something that is a big part of me, and I don't feel like you love that part of me. I'm not going to ask you to come to every race, and I'm not asking you to commit the culture. I'm sharing how I feel. I'm also not saying I've forgotten everything you've done for me to help me on this path. I understand in the past I've tried to make you into something that you're not and forcing you into a culture, but I thought long and hard about this. I just think I want an attempt at caring about it and respect it, and then I can show my care for what you love. I think that's fair. You're dating a cowgirl and you may marry her. I know that's not who you ever dreamed of committing to, but I hope you understand what you will be living with for the rest of your life. I find it ironic, the place you wanted her so badly to move, compromising her college focus, is the place you took her life. If you cared for her, you would have never had a gun pointed at her. Your family has asked our church to please help Angie get over this. How in the world does your family think watching and feeling my daughter take her last breath is something I will ever get over? I know my daughter, and I will forever speak the truth about narcissism for Hallie, because of Hallie. She mattered, and my heart is forever shattered. Here's the last thing. Actions are what matters. I can say what I think about you, and you can say what you think about me, or hang on to the journal where she wrote to you. But actions speak louder than words, and your actions while she was alive, and your actions that cost her life, say it all. She knew she would always be safe at my house. It would always be a place she could come home to. I always told her that, Hallie, I will be here for you through the highs and lows, whether you are 20 or 45. You can always come home, because I knew you were a thief and you stole so much from us. I want you to look at Chase and Summer. You took the most from them. You took their big sister that they would have a relationship with much longer than their parents. In Hallie's words, you don't like who she was becoming, and now you can have the day that you deserve because God saved her from you. So that's my original.
That's the original. And I just want to hit on a couple of points in that I think are important. You talked about the Cody Johnson concert, and I had a coworker, since their radio station tickets, I had a coworker there. And he said to me after the fact, "What's with your daughter's boyfriend?" He literally acted like a 4-year-old child during a concert. I've never seen a grown man act that way, trying to upset your daughter. I mean, you made it obvious to everyone around you. And then going to our wedding day, where Hallie's roommate had to confront you about how you were treating her because you were upset about our families joining. And then you decided to drive a wedge between Hallie and a roommate from that point on. That's not what a normal human being, person who loves someone and wants to marry them, does. That's sick. And then let's talk about the fact that middle of Hallie's freshman, sophomore year, myself, she liked it when I would go with her and her friends to Black and Gold, this local college bar. And you decided at Christmas of that year that she was going there too much and having fun. And you were concerned that that might impact you because you didn't believe in yourself. And so you told her that you quit drinking and you would appreciate it if she would quit drinking as well. Just, things a college kid does. So again, she did that for you. That ended my bonus dad-daughter time with her in those situations. But you chose that for her. And so a lot of different things in this that we could go back and forth to and point to. I go back to the horse thing again, where you were going to call Angie's bluff on the horses, when then a couple of weeks later, we literally asked you to chip in just $200 on a foal. We were going to do the rest with Hallie's dad. And you said, no, this is who you were. It's who you are. It's the individual that you are. And so one of those things where there are two sides to every story, but when you're holding a cell phone that actually shows the story, it gets really apparent, even more so than what we thought.
Yeah, and I think, okay, a lot of people can just be like, well, you're angry mom and angry bonus dad, right? But Summer has Hallie's Mac, which also has the text on it. And the other day, Summer's like, oh man, Mama, I was going back through and reading. She started reading Hallie's text because they're still on there. And she's like, it made me so sad because she would share stuff and then he would just never respond, never validating her emotions at all. And that is a 15-year-old girl seeing that. And, I think that's the challenge in a lot of aspects, is like people won't really ever know their true relationship because a lot of times people won't openly share and they cover up a lot of stuff and paint pictures of how things are on the outside versus how they are on the inside. And I will tell you, his family will violently disagree with me. I get it. Like we're all parents and we're protecting our kids. Totally get it. But I have every right to share what we felt like it's been on the Hallie side of the house.
And when you have a phone that says it, we're not saying anything that's untruthful. So
no,
that's all I'm saying.
I'll back up every statement.
Yeah.
Like
here's the phone. Here's our conversation.
I'll use my friend Amber's term. We'll show you the receipts. Show you the receipts. So then I'll read what I actually said in court. So I will say the original victim's impact statement was super easy for me to write. Super easy. I could flow through those words like nobody's business when I was writing it down because it's our experiences is what we know to be true. Flip it to how do you actually find words to describe the level of impact? There are no words. There's no freaking words that I could say in that courtroom to get anybody sitting in there to go, oh, I actually know exactly what that feels like. There's no way in hell. So you feel helpless. This entire last 2 years have felt helpless. There's nothing I can say to people to make this go away when they ask what can I help you with? There's nothing. We have that conversation how many times a week? What can I do? Nothing.
Yeah,
What can I do?
yes,
Nothing.
yeah.
Helpless. How do I describe what this feels like? There are no words. Helpless. How do I fix it for my kids? I can't. Like, how could I erase this from their pain so they can actually try to live normal lives? Because the other thing is, if you noticed, both the twins had in their statements that they try to make their parents happy. And when I read that beforehand, I took them both separately and I said to Summer, I read this in your statement. And I just want you to know that is not your responsibility to try to make your parents happy. That's my responsibility. I'm in control of that. I'm responsible for my level of joy and happiness. That is not something for you to carry. Just like I can't make her happy and fix her challenges that she's going to have to experience and bring her joy. I can't do it. You are responsible for that.
Yeah, but I get it as kids for them. Like I'm a
I
43-year-old
totally
man.
get it.
And as you're a husband, I feel like I have to try to make you happy. So of course they love you the way I love you. They're trying the same thing. And that's the ever vicious cycle that our lives have become since this occurred.
Yeah, I had the same conversation with Chase, only as I was getting ready to say, like, Chase, the one thing you said in your statement was that you have to, and he's like, stop it, I know what you're going to say. And I'm like, what?
Very Chase of him.
He's like, you're going to say that that's not my responsibility. I'm like, yes, that's totally what I was going to say. And he's like, yeah, but you don't understand. Like, that's just, he basically said that. Like, that's what I feel like I want to do. I'm like, I get it. But like, it's another level of secondary losses that here my kids have to try to carry that. And I would just say, if you're parents and you're going through any challenging time, to know that your kids feel all that emotion. And I think kids do naturally try to carry that and try to make their parents laugh. Just like you mentally note that and might want to circle back and have a conversation with your kids if you even feel like they're feeling that, because they may still do it. But I think it's also helpful to say you don't have to carry that you're not responsible for that. All right. I'm going to read what I actually read in court. Thank you for your time today to listen to Hallie's family. I'm Angie Phillips, and I will forever be Hallie's mom. And for the rest of my life, I won't be able to say those words without tears and a broken heart. I've written this so many times. First, I started with how I had this gut-wrenching instinct from the first time I met the defendant and how nothing about my daughter's relationship with him felt right. But the more I understood what the victim's impact statement was, the harder this was to write. My guess is that nobody in this room knows what it's like to experience this type of soul-shattering loss. So to try to find the words to describe the impact is impossible. I can't explain to you what it's like to grow a human in your body, be there for her first breath, hold her so tight to you, promising to protect her and always fight for her, then to be there for her very last breath at 20 years old, holding her so tight and once again promising to fight for her when her death was avoidable. Sunday, November 27th, I got the call every parent is scared to death of. A familiar voice of my godmother saying, Angie, I think something happened to Hallie. In an instant, your worst fears are realized and your family will never be the same. All we knew was that somehow she was shot and being life flighted. We still didn't believe it. There must be some mistake, a rumor that somebody got wrong. I had just been Snapchatting her. Surely, if it was her, somebody would have called us. We knew an ICU nurse at the university and had her check the system to see if Hallie was on the board, and nothing. Okay, it must be a mistake. But then we got the dreaded confirmation that Hallie was on her way. Why we had to hear the news that my daughter was fighting for her life from a neighbor to my aunt who then called me, I will never understand. The defendant's family never thought that Hallie's mom may need to be called as she was fighting so hard to live. We watched a helicopter land at the university. I will never forget how the helicopter came in. It was like watching a horror movie unfold in front of you and you're frozen. I wondered how much pain she was in, what kind of shape she was in, what she looked like, if she was scared, if she was even alive. I wanted to hold on to my daughter and let her know that her mom was there, but I couldn't even get close. All we knew was that she was shot in the face and she had a pulse. It wasn't long after she arrived and stabilized, the doctors came into the waiting room that was starting to fill up to look us in the eye and tell us the bullet was lodged in her C1 vertebrae and brainstem, and there was nothing that they could do. Nothing that they could do. The room was quiet, but my insides were screaming. I wish I could describe the utter despair you feel when hearing those words, but there are no words. No words that anybody will ever be able to hear and be able to then imagine and comprehend unless you're a mother that knows her daughter is going to die. You literally feel like you're dying right alongside of your child, that your heart can't beat anymore. I would never be able to speak to my daughter again, to hug her. I would never be able to hear her laugh, and I will never be able to see her big, beautiful smile. She would never exist again on this earth. The questions and images that haunt me is, how much pain did she feel? What did she actually see with the bullet hitting her mouth? What were her last moments like for her? What was it like to die and then be brought back to life by Deputy Rudiger? I replay that over and over and over. We kept trying to understand what possibly could have happened. Hallie was a gun advocate and knew gun safety. She carried. We trusted her. She deer hunted the whole weekend before with just her and her brother in the stand. She knew gun safety and had a respect for guns. I remember walking down the long hospital hallway to meet the defendant and his family after his questioning was done and still not knowing what happened. How could Hallie have been shot when she knew and practiced gun safety? As we met, I asked the simple question, what happened? And the response is forever imprinted in my brain. I didn't know it was loaded. My mind raced. He shot her? How? Why? How? Why? My beautiful girl shot in the face. How could someone not protect her? How could they allow this to happen? This could have been avoided. All the thoughts racing through my brain. I turned and frantically ran to the bathroom to lock myself in there and sob on the floor, not being able to catch my breath. And little did I know, this was my life sentence, a daily ritual the past 2 years, going into the bathroom with tears, questioning, and trying to keep my broken heart beating, and then getting back up to open the door and face the world again. As we walked into her hospital room for the first time, in room number 7, it was so traumatic. She was hooked up to every machine possible, lifeless, helpless, bleeding out of her mouth. My beautiful girl, who was doing nothing wrong, just hanging out on the couch. The twins said, "This looks like the movies." And then we realized that this literally was Hallie's brother and sister's first time ever in a hospital. And this would be their experience, to watch their sister die. I sat awake the first night holding tight to her hands and her arms, listening to the beeps of the machines and the nurses coming in to suction her mouth. I didn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. I wanted to stare at every little freckle on her beautiful face, memorizing every part of her to make sure I was there for her every last breath that she would take. The next day I said to the nurse, I cannot get close enough to her. And they said so matter-of-factly, we'll just crawl in bed with her. I laid with Hallie for the next day and a half, my arm wrapped around her tiny waist, praying and begging God to please guide us. Please hold on to her so tight, and please just let her go peacefully. Please help us. Little did I know that this also would be my daily ritual of begging God to help us, to help me live with this forever ache. When it was time on Tuesday, November 29th, we held her hand and walked alongside her bed down a long hallway lined with family and friends and hospital staff to honor her choice of being an organ donor, to the room where we would let her go. I placed my hand on her chest and whispered in her ear that it was okay to go, that we loved her so much and we were so proud of her, and that I'm sorry that this happened to her. I held onto her hand as I felt her heartbeat and her breath fade away. It was so peaceful. At 3:11 p.m., Hallie left us in this world behind, and part of my heart and soul left too. Losing a child is like throwing a glass plate to the ground and it shatters into a million pieces. And there's no way to repair it. You can never put the pieces back together. Now add in that it was completely avoidable. My mind still can't comprehend it. There are $5 hurts and there are $5 million hurts, and this is a $5 million shattered plate. The defendant's attorney said in his closing remarks during the trial that the defendant didn't have an appreciation for where my daughter sat on the couch, that somehow her even talking to him distracted him. Well, that was actually way too many words. What he should have said was that the defendant didn't have an appreciation for Hallie, for her life, and who she was. Actions speak louder than words, and his actions on that day scream what I knew to be true. Our hearts and souls are completely shredded, and my kids have witnessed and experienced a kind of heartbreak and loss that unravels you, that forever changes the rest of your life. Thousands of times they wanted to reach out to their sister and can't. Hallie was 7 years older than the twins, and they're at an age where they need her, and they will never know a future life with a big sister that would pave the way for them. So much was stolen from them, and nobody talks about the secondary losses, the collateral damage. Not only do you lose someone, you lose your own sense of self, your sense of trust, safety, and security. And they also lost a part of their mom that they will never get back. Despite the forever pain and heartbreak, I will fight to honor Hallie until the day I see her again, to keep her memory alive so the world knows and has an appreciation for who Hallie was. She mattered and deserved to be protected by someone she thought she could trust. Your Honor, there's nothing that can be done to bring her back. I have an appreciation for the accountability you put in place during the bench trial. As we all know, guns don't shoot people. People shoot people. I don't wish the defendant ill will. I don't hate him. I am not wired that way. But I hate what happened. I hate the decisions he made while she was living and the decisions that caused her death. I hate living without my daughter. But the defendant and his family truly believe that he is the victim somehow, not Hallie's family. They think I need to get over this, and this is not something you ever get over. It's been 22 months, and I have yet to hear or see anything that resembles taking accountability or two simple words like, I'm sorry. I trust you will do what you think is best in the avoidable death of my daughter, Hallie Elizabeth Phillips.
Can I just say, you read it like a boss, like you addressed the judge, you looked at the defendant multiple times. You did a great job. And I know your entire family, your kids, my kids, your mom and dad, your siblings, everyone incredibly proud of you. You did a great job honoring Hallie and showing up for her well.
Thank you. So carrying through what the sentencing hearing was like, that completed our side of it. And then the defendant's side, his parents both took the stand. And that was also hard to listen to because statements were made like, well, basically they're sad because he sometimes just stays in the basement and doesn't come up and eat dinner with them, that he gets anxious around loud noises or doesn't really go out to eat, those types of things. And I will tell you, like, my kids, it was so hard for them to listen to that because it's just not comparable. It's not comparable to never having your child. And they even read something that Hallie had written in this journal, but it was actually a letter that she had written to me when her and the defendant first started dating because she knew I had concerns. And it was basically asking me to give him a chance because it was in the early stages of them dating and that he was a nice guy and blah, blah, blah. So they read that letter, which I just find so ironic that they are hanging on to that when at the end of the day, he took her life. Like, I don't know what argument you have
Not
about
only that, let's
just
go back to what you addressed earlier, that, yeah, that was the beginning of the relationship 4 years earlier, February of 22, several months before he shot and killed her. She wrote the letter in her phone that you referenced earlier about how he didn't like who she was becoming, how she could see that he didn't like that and he needed to learn to live with it. She was seeing and recognizing a different side of the young man versus the previous letter from 4 years ago that was referenced that day.
Yeah. So they spoke, and then the judge asked if the defendant had anything that he wanted to say. And so they turned it over to his attorney and the defendant, and the defendant did want to speak. And he said, "Do you want me to take the stand or can I stay sitting here?" And the judge said, "That's fine." So he stayed sitting, which meant that he had his back to us. And then he apologized for the pain that he's caused our family.
With his back to us.
With his back to us. So,
which, if I'm going to be honest, is the man that he is. I'll say that, and I will stand on business with that statement. That's the only mean thing I'm going to say.
So then the judge spoke, and basically, as soon as the judge started speaking, you knew he was going to just get probation. So the judge said, "We punish evil and we correct stupid." And he sentenced him to 4 years in prison, but suspended the execution of that sentence, which means he'll serve it out with probation. And if he would really violate probation in a big way, then he would have to serve that time. So many people afterwards message us and ask what we thought about the sentencing. And I don't really have a good answer for that. Like, I can't put a time of sentencing, like how much time you should have or what should happen on it. It's like trying to put a time to how much Hallie's life was worth. Like, you can't, there's no way to do that. And in my mind, I had no expectation going into it because I just can't even process, like, how do you take your daughter's life and somehow equate it to a sentence that someone should serve that, okay, well, if he serves that amount of time, then everything must be okay. When you lose a child, and it's especially someone else's decision that caused it, the world becomes like really clear. And like, you're not in control of hardly anything. You're only in control of how you react to things. And at the beginning of this journey, the defendant was offered a plea bargain that basically was what he ultimately ended up getting. And he'll forever be a felon and he can't own a gun. But I just don't think that there's ever going to be a part of it that like makes anything feel okay. I can be super empathetic to the family, but I will say most of their statements made our entire family cringe, because the statement about him not coming up to eat family dinner sometimes, like that's pure devastation for the parents. We got home that night and Summer was like, "I can't believe that the mom said that." She's like, "Oh, well, you know what? I guess Hallie is in our house all the time, but only her ashes are in our house. Like, I wish I had that problem." I mean, that's how my kids react to the statements of, like, they have no idea. Like, they still have their son. How is that even comparable? And I also think people still feel like somehow this gun just like went off and we should just all be like, hey, it's okay. They loved each other. It's like, it didn't just go off. She was 5 feet away from him and it shot her in the face. Tell me that it was not pointed at her and you didn't know your surroundings. Now, I also remind people, because they say he didn't do it on purpose, it's like, correct. This was an accident. There is some level of consequence for your actions. He wasn't charged with a intent, like he meant to do it. Anyway, it's still like, when we talk through it, there's still just no way for us to like possibly explain to people what it feels like. I mean, it's just not comparable at all. So yes, I would say that there is a level of disappointment when we look through our lens of like what Hallie's life was worth. It feels like getting to just go do whatever you want every day doesn't feel like enough consequence. On the flip side, I don't think I would ever want to carry the weight of being responsible for shooting and killing someone. So I also know we're not the ultimate judge. The judge is not the ultimate judge in that case. We're not judges at all, so we have no capacity to even weigh in on that. Summer did say afterwards when we were all done, she's like, well, that didn't even matter. I went up there and I took the stand and it didn't even matter. But I explained to her that the judge already knew, I'm sure, what he planned to sentence. But it's more about you and the opportunity for you to say what you want to say. And if you wouldn't have spoken up and the judge ruled the same way, then you may always wonder, like, would your statement have made a difference if you would have shared it? So regardless of the outcome, the entire process, I feel like, is therapeutic, as challenging, as hard, and scary as it was. At the end of the day, I feel like we're all still just trying to process our feelings and our emotions from it all. And I think we're just all still broken and tired and glad that that part is over.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Several family members, today we're able to talk about kind of what was shared in court. Several family members also wrote letters to the judge, not just Angie and her dad and the twins. I wrote one, had to write it a couple times. Her friends wrote them. So a lot of people wrote them.
And
yeah, so it's a lot. And, one of those things where I thought the same thing as Angie. She's like, well, you read something to the judge. Oh, okay. For me, I'm glad that the twins did what they did, because I know for them, it was them being able to get it off their chest. As I've shared with Angie, it's like mine's still sitting on my chest because it went to a judge. That's it. So whether I read it on the podcast at some point or something else, like I'm going to eventually like explode with the fact that I can see why it was so therapeutic and necessary for the twins, even though they might not have realized it at the time, to be able to say the things that they needed to say that day. And I think they're always going to be grateful that they had that opportunity. That's always going to mean something long-term in their healing process, that they were able to face the person who killed their sister and say the things that they needed to say. And I'm so proud of them for finding the courage at 15 years old to be able to do that.
That is the silver lining of it all. Like when people reached out, my response is like, yeah, we're super sad. But the silver lining is that I am so incredibly proud of my family, of my entire family and friends that have supported us in this entire painful walk. But especially my dad and Chase and Summer, who made the choice to take the stand, to make their statement. It's not easy. In writing their own statements, I walked away with just a whole other level of proud for both of them and for my dad. So I'm not sure what's next for us. We focused on some rest shortly after. We just happened to have like a birthday trip booked right after the sentencing hearing. So we were able to get away for a little bit. I have my second book that's going to be coming out shortly. We also have the Hallie's 2-year angelversary coming up. So we've got a lot of big things on the horizon, and we'll see what happens next.
That's really it. So if you want to just continue to pray for us, we'd appreciate it. And we are so grateful for you listening. We know this is a long episode, so thank you for bearing with us. We'll try to make next week's a little more lighthearted. Okay. Because I know this was heavy. This was some heavy stuff. So, and we'll have to readdress things as we go along, but we'll try to be a little more lighthearted next week. We hope that you have a wonderful week. We thank you for listening as always. God bless. Thank you for listening to Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and at blendedblessedalwaysamess.com.
Reach out to us on any of our social channels. We would love to hear from you. Have a great week.